Brand new street and brand new me. Side by friends I need. Don't you tell me that you're in town, I already know.
20 years old, we think.
Really?
Really old, yeah.
Wow.
But cheddar you can also keep for a long time, right? Yeah. Unless you eat it. But sometimes.
Okay guys, if you stand around it. No. It starts off as. What she's made out of? It starts off as milk. Okay, so welcome guys. So my name is Dalo. I'll explain the cheese making to you guys, and afterwards we can do some cheese tasting.
Okay.
Yeah. So it starts off as milk. Yeah. Now, so for our milk production, we have about 100 cows. Well, 110. Of the 110 cows, we milk a little less than half of them, and that's because we have a disproportionate large amount of younger cattle at the moment. The cows that we milk twice a day, once in the morning and then once again late in the afternoon. Afternoon milk will come straight from the milking parlor, which is right between the exit and the barn. It goes through metal piping through the whole store, and it goes straight into that tub over there, which is basically the same as this one. It's only a little bit bigger and more modern. Yeah. Now the reason the afternoon milk comes in first is because the wall of the tub is hollow. There's a double wall in there, so that allows us to circulate cold water through the wall so we can keep the milk cool until the morning. Okay. Acts like a big refrigerator. Then in the morning, second half of the milk comes in, we warm it back up, and then we can start the process of actually making cheese. Now it's a big tub. If this one's completely full, this one can hold around 1,100 liters of milk. The one that we actually use is a little bit bigger. Traditionally, this is made from milk that starts to spoil.
Okay.
Then the second thing that goes in, and that was what someone named here? Rennet. Yes. And rennet is basically a digestive enzyme that is needed to break down the milk. So when we add both of them in, we wait half an hour, the milk breaks down, the fats and the proteins, they'll stick together and they'll separate themselves from the liquid. It's the easiest way of explaining it. It's basically a coagulant, so everything will thicken up. Once everything thickens, that's when we hang 3 of these nice big knives onto the machine, and then we can slowly have that rotate to cut that big mass into small pieces. That is cut. It looks somewhat like this. Normally it's not as clear, and that's because we added water so you can see it. Normally it's a lot greener. Yeah. Now here we have 2 parts of the milk. We have the liquid, which is what we call the whey water, and then we have the white stuff floating around in there, and those are the curds. Yeah. Now what we do is, the whey, we drain that out. We use that as feed for the older calves, the ones that are transitioning from milk to water, because it has a lot of nutrition, a lot of vitamins and minerals, has a large nutritional value. Okay. Then what we have to do is we have to replace that with water so the curds don't dry out. That's why this is clearer. Yeah. Then we can start making the cheese. And by doing that, we have to scoop out the curds out of the tub in a siphon container. Yeah, so we scoop them all out, we fill up the container. I'm just going to use this. Full, lid goes on, and then everything is stacked up under a press, like an apartment building. And then all that water is pressed out. Now we have to press both sides. So first we do one side, then by hand we take all the cheeses out, we flip them over, we put them back, we label them, and then they go back under the press again. Now once both sides of the cheese are pressed, usually we're about 4 hours in at that point, we have to flip the cheese over again. Again, we take all the cheeses out, we flip them over, only this time we leave out the sieve, and then the cheeses go back in the container. And then they'll sit like this until the end of the day. And that will give the cheese the chance to sink in. Now at the end of the day, before we go home, we take all the cheeses that were made that day, and we put them in a salt bath, which is literally a tub of water and salt. Yeah. Now the salt water where the cheeses go into is about 21% salt, which is roughly 6 times as salty as the ocean is. Oceans will average about 3.5% salt. Yeah. Now they go into the salt for a couple of reasons. Most importantly, we use this salt as a natural preservative. Yeah. Second of all, the salt will also enhance the flavor of the cheese, just like you add salt to your food. And if you guys ever remember from science class, the salt water will pull out more of the moisture of the cheese, and therefore the cheese becomes a bit firmer and it doesn't fall apart as easily. Now they go in overnight. So before we go home, everything goes into the salt, When we come back in the morning, we take them out, we dry them off, and then they go on that wooden table behind the window to dry. Now, drying will take about a day. After that day, you'll see that the cheeses, they are still white and they're not yellow yet. Yeah. Now, cheese does have a natural yellow coloring to it when it dries out, which is why you use yellow or orange. But that outside that you see, that is wax. Yeah. Now we use a paraffin-based wax. We use liquid paraffin. So we take a sponge, wax one side first, wait for it to dry, and then next morning we can do the other side. Each side is then waxed at least 3 times.
Wow.
That also means that only waxing the cheese will already take 6 days. While making the cheese just takes a morning, because in the afternoon they just lay there, and before we go home they go into the salt. Yeah? Now the whole process of making cheese altogether will take a little less than 2 weeks. And that is also a good thing. Cheese younger than that will barely have any flavor. After 2 weeks, that's when the bacteria will start working, and gradually as the cheese becomes older and older and older, the more and more flavor the cheese will develop. Yeah? It starts off as cheese that's not finished yet. This is from yesterday. This has no flavor. Just to keep it easy, we call this a couple days old. Then we have young cheese. Then we're talking in terms of weeks old. This will be very soft, very young, very creamy. That's why it tastes a bit like butter. That's why Germans call it butter cheese. Yeah. Then, in terms of months old, we have mature cheese. And mature cheese will be a lot stronger and drier in flavor, more like a cheddar. Yeah. Now then, after about a year for this size, they will start to crystallize. And after a couple of years, you have a very, very old cheese. And this will be very strong and very dry. It's going to be more like a Parmesan. Now, as you see, the cheeses, they shrink. Now, just like people do, they become smaller and smaller, and that's because when the cheese ages, they sweat. Yeah. So the moisture is excreted out of the cheese. Cheeses will become smaller. They'll become darker on the inside. They'll become drier, but they'll have a stronger flavor. It becomes more concentrated. If you guys want to know,
A bit like the menopause.
At what point do you add the flavour? Because
we're gonna get there. We're gonna get there. You're gonna get there. Hold your questions. Probably 90% of them I'll answer. Okay. If you want to know how old the cheese is, what you do, you grab a cheese and you squeeze it. Yeah? If the cheese is relatively soft, that means it's young. Yeah? Mature cheese, you can also still squeeze. It just takes a lot more pressure. Yeah. Now the really old one, these are rock solid. Watch.
Oh, wow.
You can still eat this. The only problem is you can't cut this anymore, but you use it for grating.
Okay.
It's like a Parmesan.
Like a Parmesan.
it's like Parmesan.
Yeah. Now, we also make a lot of different flavors of Gouda cheese with different herbs and spices. And you can think of things like garlic and chives.
Yeah.
Italian herbs, taste like pizza.